So we're doing a series on James Dobson's Dare to Discipline, his balance, love, and control. This one is about his ideas about discipline and reward. And this is really the spine of what he's offering parents. He's offering them a kind of behaviorism. And he comes out right and says this. He quotes Skinner and Thorndike, an educational psychologist, and the law of reinforcement, and says the behavior which achieves desirable consequences will reoccur. So he is going to give miracle tools to parents, that's what he calls them, and advocate for discipline and punishment and advocate for rewards. And he's known for this. He doesn't, I just finished reading Trip. Dobson doesn't give like the 7 steps to spank or something like that. He does give a strong case. He tries to make a strong case that parents need to be respected. They need to demand respect. He really presents children as opponents to parents who are just there to test a parent. They're there to test the boundaries. They're there to test the limits. They're there to defy the parent. And in fact, he says on page 34, a child's resistant behavior always contains a message to his parents which they must decode before responding. That message is often phrased in the form of a question, are you in charge or am I? So he's going to really set up for parents that it's always going to be a power struggle. In fact, Dobson several places talks about how important it is for parents to win. And I had to wonder if this was the origin for what we see later coming from Douglas Wilson of like, you've got to win. That's the most important thing. But it's definitely here. And he gives a lot of, children are always depicted very negatively. Dobson's famous for his anecdote with his dog, Siggy, where he was trying to train Siggy to sit up or sit down. I'm not sure which. And the dog wouldn't do it. And he talks about seeing the rebellion in the dog's eyes. So he's very almost fixated on it's a contrast to Tripp, who's really trying to diagnose what's going on in the heart. And Dobbs is going to say anything that defies your authority is rebellious behavior meant to test you, an invitation for you to show who's in charge. He gives several examples of this. He talks about his own mother. He kind of talks about being a young man and knowing that he needed to stand several feet back because she would grab whatever was around and throw it at him. So again, we see parenting experts kind of telling on themselves a little bit because they're describing violence in their childhood homes. And this is setting a stage for a normalcy for them that I think, whether consciously or subconsciously, whether they're reflecting back on it and saying, well, that happened, but I was fine, or unconsciously, where they haven't even examined it. Also talks about an altercation he had with some teenagers where he kind of grabs them by their shoulders and around their neck and hurts them. He advocates for a place at the base of the neck on a child that you can cause enough pain that they will not repeat the behavior. So it's not limited to spanking. He's really talking about intentionally inflicting bodily harm in a myriad of ways. And it reads to me as quite utilitarian, with no discussion of the ethics around any of these, just you need to inflict enough pain to get the desired results. And he makes a promise here. He gives a little example of a girl who was a toddler who was switched because she ran out the door when her mother had told her not to. And says her mother stung her little legs a few times with a switch. After the tears had subsided, Mrs. Butler was putting the firewood in the fireplace when Susie came to her and reached out her arms saying, "Love, Mommy." The mom gathered her child tenderly in her arms, of course, and rocked her for 15 minutes, talking softly about the importance of obedience. And Dobson has interpreted this to mean children are especially ready to connect and receive parental warmth because they wanted that spanking as a boundary. They kind of were asking for it. He uses this terminology in other places. They were asking for that spanking. They received that reassurance. And so they're especially open to emotional connection. So you should connect with your child then. And I found it curious because if you remember, Tripp has something similar, but there's no discussion of what that could mean. Like, could that mean a child looking for reassurance? Could that mean a toddler very concerned about what just happened and asking, like, do I still love you? Any of those sort of things are not brought into question. Dobson's interpreting that for everyone as a child just will want to connect with you more if you spank them.